A word to the wise. We are an explicit podcast tackling content with adult themes as well as entering spoiler territory if you aren't caught up with us. This week, that would be through Prepared for the Worst. The Last Argument of Kings by Joe Abercrombie. Hey there, this is Cross.
I'm PJ.
And we are Words and Whiskey, a podcast for veteran and novice readers alike. We tackle fiction novels and love to talk about what we're drinking. You should think of us as your intoxicating weekly book club.
Speaking of, cheers.
You just ripped Fernet. Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
You know what? I should have bought you a shot glass when I was there.
Yeah, it's fine.
Or I should have brought one from North Carolina or something.
I am more than capable of rectifying this myself. I'm just not probably going to.
Which is so bizarre.
No,
You're just like, I'll just keep ripping pulls out of whatever bottle.
I'll do it.
Fair.
At some point.
Fair enough, man. I mean, like a nice matching set. I really like the metal ones, the travel ones that you guys got me forever ago. Those are really nice. You could get some souvenir ones somewhere, you know.
Could have done that.
You could get some really kitschy ones.
You just got home from
could have done
Alaska.
that in Alaska. Right.
Yesterday.
Yes, which is another reason that this episode, for anyone who's listening to this the day that it comes out, is coming out later in the day, probably, I assume.
Probably.
If not on Saturday, we're so sorry. Either way, you'll enjoy it. It's a good time. But today is our third episode talking about The Last Argument of the Kings by Joe Abercrombie. This week, we're reading Too Many Knives through Prepared for the Worst. But with that, PJ, I would love for you to give a quick overview of our peeps.
Absolutely. Our favorite G-Man has some dreams, tortures one of our friends, gets ignored by his boss, and puts a familiar mercenary on retainer. Logan feels surrounded by the consequences of his past. He helps Dogman lead the Northerners to Krumok's fortress, where they do their best to prepare for Bethod's attack. West gets a nice fatherly speech from Burr, then finds his dead body the next morning. After the funeral, he prepares to follow through with Burr's plans, only to be met with obstinance by the generals, who insist they wait for orders of succession before continuing. Barrow goes to a comedy show. And Giselle is installed via Baez's presentation to the closed council in front of the entire city as the new king. He is dragged through dressing and his first meeting with the closed council by Baez, and becomes frustrated as he learns that his job seems to be mostly ceremonial.
Everyone needs a figurehead, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. One small correction. The first time you said via presentation to the closed council, it's the open council at first, and then the closed council. Yeah.
I feel like Baez is mostly talking to the closed council in this instance, though. Like the open council is there.
Oh,
to vote,
sure. Yeah. I mean, it's the people, right?
Yeah.
Fair enough. It is the closed council in many ways that he's kind of working against. So that makes sense. Mm-hmm. On the whole, though, how did you feel about this week's reading?
I feel vindicated in a lot of my guesses. I feel.
Do you feel
utterly
vindicated
surprised by quite a bit of it too? I don't have a whole lot to say beyond that. I feel like this has been very repetitive in that there's always so much going on and it always feels great to read. I'm trying my best to be unique in how I describe each week, but it's going to boil down to those two for the foreseeable future, I think.
There's nothing that particularly struck you, nothing like I'm curious as to like, you've had inklings and thoughts, I think, especially recently, as to like Baez's involvement in a lot of things, or like what puppet strings he's really playing at, right? Did that take you by surprise?
Not really, especially after last week when we were talking about the other potential past figures that had multicolored eyes, realizing that Reynault's guard, I think, is one of them. And that was like immediately after the recording when I was thinking about that. And I know there's more I can't remember who, and I don't want to venture forward and search for it because I don't want to be spoiled by the internet. So I'm just kind of relying on my memory.
Yeah, good move. Yeah.
But like realizing that and then thinking about all of the further implications of what Baez could have been doing to put all of these pieces in place, it didn't really take me by terrible surprise when all of it fell in the way that it did.
Okay, fair enough. He's a crazy wizard, man. Crazy old wizard.
He'd be a crazy wizard.
He do be. Everybody needs one, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool. With that, let's get into Too Many Knives. This short chapter focuses us in on Logan's tenuous relationship with his name and his reputation. It's broached mostly through two conversations, one with a man named Red Hat and another with Tul Duru. Focusing first on the conversation with Red Hat, Logan really seems to be at odds with his reputation and sort of himself in a lot of ways, and assumes that he's done something to wrong this man, but instead he really just highlights that he's proud to be on his side, and he's still looked to for some semblance of guidance or heroism.
Yeah, Logan's internal monologue as this conversation with Red Hat started kind of broadened my understanding of the breadth of Logan's past and the amount of danger that he truly feels like he's put himself into by returning. I think it's more danger than he's actually put himself into, but he feels like a threat is around every single corner. Like
he's definitely not having an easy time.
No, not at all. He's feeling a little bit paranoid, seemingly rightfully so. But as this conversation with Red Hat unfolds, it's even the people that he was fighting against. They understand the politics at work of who they were fighting for, and just kind of feel relieved that they weren't the ones getting slaughtered by the Bloody Nine. So.
Yeah, you bring up a fair point. I think especially about paranoia. There is like a very fine line between paranoia and like proper wariness, and that's
I don't know if there's truly a fine line there. I think paranoia gets a negative connotation, but you can be paranoid and be right.
Yeah.
Or can you? Is paranoia, like, by definition, not rational?
I think by definition, paranoia is irrational. Okay. I believe that that's sort of the intent with paranoia. So that's why I'm saying, like, there's a thin line there, especially, given your reputation. Yeah, given what he's dealing with. Unjustified suspicion and mistrust of other people or actions, or the unwarranted or delusional belief that one is persecuted, harassed, or betrayed by others, occurring as a part of a mental condition. So those are sort of the two states.
Okay. So, yeah, maybe not actually paranoid, but overly cautious. A little bit more cautious than he maybe needs to be, but it's good to be this cautious. Especially given the title.
Honestly,
and, the conversation later about... We'll get to that, I know.
Yeah, again, I wasn't really pushing back on the definition of paranoia and like you using the word paranoia at all. I was just saying like there is like a very thin line between like properly cautious and paranoid. In especially I think in Logan's circumstance, and I think he's showing that, especially given like Shiver's penchant, given now Red Hat. It's like, is this another guy that's going to walk up to me and be mad? And he knows that there are plenty of them out there. So
yeah. And they don't have to be people that he remembers. They can be tangential relations to people that he's wronged in the past.
Right. Like Shivers, of whom he doesn't know or recognize.
Mm-hmm. That's a little bit less than tangential. But I think he's talking even like more distant connections that still have a grudge.
For sure.
Yeah.
Right. But like Shivers is the brother of a guy that he killed,
Do you think Kevin Bacon is the brother of a guy that he killed?
Probably.
How many,
but it's like
how many degrees of Kevin Bacon is there for Logan?
At least 9. I think it's 9 degrees of Kevin Bacon. 1 for each finger.
There we go.
He's a finger's breadth away, especially if you only have 9. What if that was the way that your distance from Kevin Bacon was determined, was by the number of fingers that you have? I don't know why that would make any sense.
All
but
of his friends
somewhere,
have no hands.
No hands. So such an unfortunate state being Kevin Bacon's
He takes
friend.
them. He collects them.
Like Glock Day, he just shows up in the night and he's like, one little piggy for the bank. It's the finger fairy. What's happening? We just started. There's a reflection that Logan has on Pharaoh again, leaving the good that he had behind to settle scores. And he's just like very besought with himself, I think, especially as he kind of reflects. He says, vengeance isn't halfway as simple or halfway as sweet as you think that it's going to be. And the fact that he didn't come to this conclusion sooner when he was like giving the advice to Giselle on like what to do versus what not to do, you know, it's very much kind of painful in some ways to see the character realize a little bit too late what he's chosen.
Yeah. Do you think Pharaoh would have gone with him if he had asked her to like come to the north? Like he could have had both. Maybe. He could have had it all, Crossland.
I don't think so. I don't feel like she would have, because I think like she is stuck in a similar path of vengeance, right? In a lot of ways. But her vengeance is not to be found there.
Yeah.
It's to be found.
And I don't think,
in the South.
I think if Logan wanted that, he wouldn't have pushed to go north to begin with.
Right.
So,
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would agree there. He would have been okay, you know, going staying south. So switching to the other half of the conversation that we have in this chapter here with Tull, it's a much more grounded conversation, one in which they both kind of fess up to the burden of their names and like kind of look it face on as to what they've earned and, you know, what they're responsible for. Logan explicitly says that he really didn't want this, and Tull replies that it doesn't mean that they didn't deserve it.
Which is a good point. I'm generally really, really happy with the amount of exposure that we're getting of Tull. He's been such a background character for the previous two books, and I think we've talked about this specifically last week, but to have him emerge as this fully fledged, fleshed out character is great. It's really different. Whereas, like, I think in our wrap up, we were talking about how all the Northmen kind of get clumped together as a single character. We're starting to see them fan out a little bit more and see some more unique traits emerge. Especially with Tull.
The two of you agreed on that. I was like, I don't know. I see them pretty differently.
No,
but the two of you. Yeah.
I think I got where she was where she was coming from.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I'm saying I think you two agreed. I
Right.
was like, I'm pretty sure that I could delineate them.
Right.
But yeah.
I like that this little bit of conversation between them. We get a lot of comparisons, like similarities, and sort of bonding over the deserving it. But the immediate contrast then of their views on the woods and whether they'd like to be anywhere else. That was nice to have that like similarity, and then just like stark, like opposite conversation about the woods.
Yeah. And their varied stances there. It is interesting, especially just to view them as like two discrete characters interacting. And you kind of get the sense of the type of leader that Logan was and why they looked up to him and what they looked up to him for. Like, he is a generally good conversationalist, and why they picked up all of these different things, because he is open and conversational with his folks. And not like we didn't get that before from, you know, Giselle, but we see it immediately there.
No, exactly. And I think this is fairly clearly metaphorical, and I think maybe pointing to their place in their journey as warriors and as Northerners. I feel like before Logan left, before he died, or before all of them died by their points of view, maybe he would have wanted to be in the proverbial woods of battle. And Tull's still there. Tull wants blood. Tull wants to fight. Logan's over it.
Yeah, he's still got fight in him in a lot of ways. And then we kind of end the chapter on a dour note and a completion of a quote that we've heard often for a variety of reasons. But as it goes, you can never have too many knives, his father had told him, unless they're pointed at you and by people who don't like you much.
The rest of the quote doesn't really flow off the tongue as well as the first part does, I have to say.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. And like a lot of these aphorisms often come accompanied. I say this as though it's like the proper full one, but like a lot of these aphorisms are always accompanied by like variances. Mm-hmm. And I think this variance isn't necessarily a truer one than anything else, but it is a sharper one in a lot of ways.
Yeah, it's a situational one.
Mm-hmm. It's poignant. And it makes the dagger a metaphor.
Yeah.
As though it wasn't always before.
Of course.
Or knives, rather.
Yeah, no. It's only literally a knife.
Well, he did have a bunch of knives. I mean, I don't know. It seems pretty literal to me. All right.
Pretty true.
With that, we'll move on to the best of enemies. Glocta's having another one of his good old, not very bad, pretty good dreams. They're sort of various and unmooring in all of its delights, but still asking, demanding, and harassing our boy for the seed. There's a vision. It switches forms again a couple of times over the course of this. What do you make of our colonel waking up, almost feeling like he's being eaten again?
Yeah, eaten, of course. It seems still to be pointing to an eater or something eater adjacent, being on his tail or being after him, whatever it is. But later on in this chapter, we get an understanding that Mamoon is directly in the mix here, as opposed to just kind of the overseer of all of these operations. So feels to me he is the entity haunting Glocta's dream, but time will tell on that one, I suppose.
Yeah.
I'll put that up as a bet.
You think it's Mamoon?
I think it's Mamoon. Did you really have to get that flourishing with it?
I'm always this.
I mean, in the middle of our recording.
Yeah. For those at home of whom aren't seeing me type this in the middle of the chat, PJ believes the haunting dream spirit to be none other than Mamoon, leader of the 100 words. That's what I wrote down.
You could have just highlighted that and wrote bet.
Sorry, you're right. I forgot to put bet.
Okay.
Fair enough. And, I think an interesting prediction and a valid point on sort of the like very real tangible threat that is the eaters coming from the south, right? Like, and Glocta is continually pushing this perspective. He's been our connection to the south through a lot of this and this sort of impending disaster that's coming from that side in that war. But yeah, interesting. Cool thought. Also, just as a side note here, and I don't want to get too spoilery by any means, but like, how people on the internet are talking down about like Daemon's time in Harrenhal in the current season of House of the Dragon. We won't get into these specific details, but you're fools. Dream sequences are great. They expose characters and they give you like foreshadowing in fun ways, and they give you like relief in a lot of other ways. Like, what do you want?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to talk about that, but we're not going to.
We'll talk about it later. More Harrenhal. Anyway. But now, it comes time to elect the king in our open council. And it seems as though, given this sort of private meeting that is happening before this, neither the judiciary or the Inquisition really have a path forward to electing whomever they might choose or prefer. Glocta does take this moment, though, to bring up their probably more pressing issue of the potential invasion of the Gurkish, to which he refers to them as rumors, he being Salt, and dismisses them entirely outright, which is just kind of ridiculous. Salt is having none of it. He doesn't like this. He doesn't like anything. He just wants to make sure that the king thing is settled first.
Yeah, Glocta makes an observation that I can only assume will become the eventual truth, which is that when this rumor becomes a fact, if it ever indeed does become a fact, he will still get the blame for not doing more to warn Salt of the impending danger. He is, by all means, one of the highest positions within the Inquisition, with only Sult being above him, but he still feels like one of the lowest compared to Sult. Like, Sult is just so many steps higher and wields unlimited authority. Like, I would hate to be anyone in his employ, I think.
Yeah, it just goes to show that, like, there's a lot of bureaucracy involved in sort of the administration of the Inquisition in general, but also, like, middle management does get blamed almost exclusively for the failure of upper management to recognize things and to notice things.
That's
because
true.
Like, if things aren't spoken about loud enough or well enough or whatever, it's to me, it's just a funny metaphor, I think, inside of the rest of this, of like, hey dude, there's a war on, and he's like, what? We need votes. I need a king that I can control. I don't care.
Glocta did have an interesting opportunity within this moment to be completely truthful and not just to say that he had an anonymous source without betraying the fact that Carlet Dan Ida is still kicking around. He could have just called out Yulway.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, it didn't even show up in his internal monologue as an option. So I don't know if it didn't cross his mind for whatever reason, or if he has other reasons why he didn't feel like he could share that.
I think in particular, if you look at sort of Glocta's internal monologue as it relates to this rumor, especially if you like go look back at some of the stuff we talked about last week, I know it's been a bit. One of the things that I think is important to kind of point out is that he wasn't 100% confident in what Yulway was saying. He had it as a note, but it wasn't until it was verified that it really mattered. So I think he's kind of insulating himself here of like, it kind of does feel rumorish because I would need two sources to corroborate, and just having one crazy wizard. Oh, cool. I'm having trouble with one wizard already. You're introducing me to a second wizard and you can't prove him to me, Like, I think he's insulating himself a little bit against risk there.
Yeah, that's fair.
But because he is definitely aware, as we kind of
he mentioned it earlier. Yeah, but just not in this moment. Yeah, but that's fine.
Yeah, fair. After a realization and a suggestion, it seems like the best path forward would be through combining the efforts of Morovia and Salt, and so Glocta is sent to negotiate that agreement. While eating his large joint of meat, bloody gravy, the whole mess of which Glocta kind of wishes that he could partake in, but can't. Close to Ra in the center, he listens to Glocta present the idea and throws back his own, a democracy of sorts. In the end, he agrees to throw his votes behind whatever neutral candidate makes the most sense in the end to prevent the force from going, from swaying one way or another to Brock or Huygen or Isher. I think those are the three.
Mm-hmm. It was nice to get some FaceTime with Morovia, even if there was some pretty obvious theatrics involved with their meeting, with their meal. I'm still trying to get a grip on the democracy comment. Like, I understand the actual comment, but I don't understand why he would just blow his whole wad and like say it outright to Glocta, unless he's been like really scrutinizing Glocta a lot more than we realize, and knows that he wouldn't betray him and in kind of sharing this secret. I would assume it would be a secret, given Glocta's use of the word treason and description of it.
Yeah, and it's not even certain that this is like what he thinks he could actually do or accomplish.
No,
but it is like a desire, right?
Right. Yeah, it's a pipe dream, and like he insinuates later on, like, oh, maybe you could come work for me. Like, no specific terms there, but that feels like
he says like you can find another master
meeting bomb drop. Not a like, you would think you'd want to like loosen the tension a little bit between him and Glocta first. But hey,
that's fair.
I'm not what's his title?
High Justice.
High Justice, yeah. So I don't know what that position entails and how he got there.
Yeah, fair point. He does also say, and I appreciate this quote, the vast majority of men would far rather be told what to do than to make their own choices. Obedience is easy. And it's such a good work, Joe. Good work.
Is, and that's probably true, but I don't think that you would get that if you were to ask somebody about it. Like, you have to make that decision for them in order for them to be happier that way. I think given the choice, they'd want input. Like, they would say they would want input. Like, you wouldn't get, if you were to poll the populace, I don't think you would get an overwhelming majority of people saying, yeah, tell us what to do. Have ultimate control over us with no say on our end. But
alternatively, if they don't understand what it's like to not have ultimate control over anything and everything, you know, like, there isn't going to be an individual of whom, for the most part, has the forethought of the guy from Monty Python screaming about the political repression, right? Like, that's not the way that it goes if you don't have any idea, or if you're like removed from thought and schools of thought, you know?
That's fair. There are still things that affect them, and they understand that politics directly affects their lives.
Yeah. I'm not suggesting entirely holistically, like, that's out of the question, but I do think that I think I find this quote more acceptable and reasonable given the confines.
Yeah, given the context.
Yeah. Right. The context within which it lives. But I think it's also just generally pretty true. Yeah. We then come to the torture of Brother Longfoot to kind of round out the end of this chapter here. And I knew that this sad moment was coming as our glittering navigator was held to account, quote, for his actions, quote. Like, he didn't do anything. He gives up names easily. Of course, it's not crazy. He talks to the seed. He recounts their whole journey. He shares literally every detail he possibly can, including other names such as Mamoon, which validates some of what Glock already knows, like we've been talking about back and forth, and the 100 words and some of the other things. So, like, there's a lot of clarity, you know, given back in this circumstance.
Yeah. Gets to go back to his bag.
Back to the bag.
Yeah, what a guy. I don't feel like this will end in any way with the release of Brother Longfoot. Boy, howdy, do I wish it would. I think this deserves a cheers to Brother Longfoot and his incredible talents. Unfortunately,
miraculous gifts and
I'll be excited if he shows up again.
Cheers, my good man. Oh, yeah. Yeah, that dash of orange bitters on top was the move. Yeah, I mean, it's just a bummer, right? Like, I can't think of any other way to describe it outside of the fact that, like, this is every person of whom comes under the knife to some degree with Glotka is a full ass person. And, like, you know, it's important to remember that no matter how much we like someone, whatever the Inquisition needs, they will extract by whatever means they have. And we like this other guy that's, like, doing that. You know, yeah. Like, we're a fan actively. This is Joe, I think, kind of turning it on us and being like, oh, you really like him, huh? Or for the people who don't like Brother Longfoot are like, yeah, get him. But
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Damn it, Joe.
Damn it. Damn it, man. You've done me in.
And the spotlight is on us like that.
With that, let's go to the next chapter, Fortunes of War. We turn to West for the first time in a while, and he finally has a moment to talk to Burr about the Battle of Dunbreck from the previous book. And the old man says that he's proud of him and claps him on the shoulder. I like the little speech that he gives him too, just kind of detailing the choices that he made. He says, "You did what I would have wanted you to do. It is important that an officer should care, but it is vital that he should not care too much. He must be able to place his men in harm's way. He must be able to send them to their deaths if he deems it necessary. He must be able to make sacrifices and to weigh the greatest good without emotion counting in his choice. That is why I like you, West. You have compassion in you, but you have iron too. One cannot be a great leader without a certain ruthlessness."
Damn it, man. Why do you gotta say stuff like this? People always die after they say stuff like this. If he had just shut up, maybe he could have held out long enough.
Took a sip of tea. Bad timing.
He could have held out long enough to actually like start the march forward, and we wouldn't be in this fucking mess. But he had to say this, and it takes out all their fucking energy, and their life just leaves them. This is a death speech. And he should have shut his mouth.
And he knew it. Yeah. He absolutely knew what he was setting him up for. That's funny. Yeah.
It is a good speech, though.
Wrapped.
It
is a good speech.
Nice to say.
Yeah. Yeah. It is. I mean, again, by all account, it's great. We're few, by comparison, I would say. Not that these books aren't filled with wisdom or even speeches or moments of grandiosity or anything like that, but this week in particular, there are more than a couple of these sort of longer segments of speech that I think do well in both like addressing characters from another character's perspective and kind of laud them one way or another. Baez has one later, of course, with Giselle. But there are just a couple of these moments that have been sprinkled in that are reminiscent of things that we love to highlight in a lot of the other works that we've covered on the show. And I really like this one. It's a good little speech.
Mm-hmm.
It's a little speech, though.
It is a little speech. Especially when we're comparing them to like the speeches that we get in Red Rising and the further books. But
right. Yeah, full 2-page diatribes of, and though we shall push back the bleak edge of oblivion with the son of our swords, charge! Or whatever, something like that.
Something like that.
Yeah, cool. We then turn to another fortunate, actually, back up. Burr's dead.
Burr is dead. He does indeed die after this.
We're going to talk about that more in a moment, but goddamn,
that kills him.
Yeah, speech killed him. It's so sad. It's so sad. Okay, we'll get more to that in a moment, but like, come on, man, you're totally right. If he wouldn't have given the speech, he would have made it. It would have been great. Everyone would have been happy. Maybe his stomach issues would have continued, but he, I don't know. The ulcer got him in the end. But we then turn to another fortunate game between the old boys, Jallenhorn, Brent, and Fully the Weakest. Just kidding. Why can I never remember the third guy's name? The guy.
We did this last week.
The one. It's always the one. Why?
We can just call him Forley. It's fine.
Yeah, the weakest. Okay, cool. Anyway, they're playing a card game and debating the various generals of who would be their next best leader between Croy and Polder and sort of their pole position in different things, as well as if they'd heard anything from Luthar, given his rise, series of promotions, and his auspicious turn as an unlikely man of the people between the different acts and actions that we, are rumored from the West and his adventure.
So I would have expected additional embellishments to Giselle's supposed conquests up to this point. But it seems the telephone's got pretty good reception up in the north, huh?
That's a pretty good work. That's a good little analogy metaphor. Good work. Yeah, no, it does. Things? An illusion? I don't know. Yeah. But nonetheless, it's good fun regardless.
It is good.
It communicates greatly the point. Good workings. Yes.
Yeah, I guess they're getting all their information directly from Therese's letters. So it makes sense that
Therese? Artie?
Or not Therese. Oh, I guess some of it is from Artie's letters, but some of it's from Jallenhorm's cousin.
Yes. I know who you're
not
talking
Therese, but one of the other. Eris?
Eris, yes.
Yeah.
That sounds right. Yep.
So, not a whole lot of steps to...
Caspa. It's fucking Caspa. Anyway.
Friendly ghost.
Yeah, Caspa. Hopefully that helps. Maybe we'll remember him this time.
Yeah. Maybe.
Yeah.
Probably not.
The letters tell it straight. I don't fucking think so either. I'm so sorry, Caspa. One day I'll remember that you're a real boy. Not this day.
I won't. It's fine.
Yeah, we're not. I mean, I'm not making any claim for your memory. So, after that, of course, in that fortunate game, of which brings up some tension in West, especially in relation to Artie and thinking about him being back and fooling around with her potentially and everything else, in addition to the sort of embellishments and like what they believe to be true or not. It's very interesting. And it is interesting to see that West also thinks that, and even recounts in his memory, he says, Lord Marshal we could be receiving orders from Lord Marshal Luthar one of these days. And, West compares him immediately to Polder or Croy, and he thinks that both of them are worse than Luthar would be in the role, which is saying something about Luthar.
Yeah. Hey.
Yeah.
I
didn't think he was going to be king, huh?
And I think a big point. I don't think how do I say this? I don't think that West would have these opinions on Croy and Polder if they were separate. But the fact that they're so like gridlocked with each other is what makes them bad.
Right. Yeah.
And one of them ascending over the other would similarly and more so be worse.
Yeah. They are they more than the sum of their parts? Yes. Yeah. Yeah. As long as they're working together underneath someone, they're more than they are individually, right? And as long as it isn't one or the other that's taking the lead. Yeah. There's a particular way that these gears have to fit, and it always includes a third gear that is driving the other two. So West wakes up to greet Burr with the morning sun, kind of the usual routine, and finds him dead. He is then quickly and almost unceremoniously put into a simple casket composed of rough carpentry, all the while his various other generals, Croy and Polder, like we've been talking about, chat on how excellent of a man he was, praising him, and I think in this circumstance, genuinely, maybe for the first time ever. Everything else is kind of seemed like ass kissing, but this seems a lot more genuine, I think, coming from them, until the prattling praise comes to a standstill, and now neither will act without one of the two of them being appointed to the Lord Marshal position. This must be settled before either of them will move an inch, even if it means the slaughter of all of the Northmen, according to the two of them. It's the one thing that they can agree on.
Yeah, these two fuckheads. That sucks. There has to be a directive in place, right? Like there has to be some sort of operational directive.
Clearly not.
I mean, I don't think they're following it, but a country in two active wars has to have some contingencies for if the highest position gets eliminated, and the succession of power and the interim succession of power. There's got to be. Man,
I don't think so, man. I think that's the whole point and problem of these two books. It's like there isn't a clear line, because these two, there would be if it weren't for these two, because one of them would be like, yeah, you just lead,
or it doesn't even have to be like one of them leading, but like follow the directive of the previous Lord Marshal until a new one is installed, or until there's
it seems inflexible, but I understand where you're going for, but yeah. I think the flexibility here, or like the way to foolproof this to the point of what you're saying is a problem, is just promote one of them in an interim and then like the other one deal with it. But that they themselves can't hand that out. They can't figure that out. I think anyone else would and could.
Right.
But not these two fuckheads. So Furious, of course, is mad at this sort of revelation and their inability to work together despite all of the growth that they've accomplished one way or another, despite their capabilities of doing so successfully up until this point for the most part. And their reluctance and their inability to go help the Northmen means that there's no trap to spring close all of a sudden. And he feels deeply insecure about the promises that he made. Reflects to end the chapter saying, "A man should only make such promises as he is sure that he can keep."
Felt pretty sure he could keep it in the moment.
Yeah, it seemed pretty confident.
Mm-hmm. By that, I mean, if you're going to be that cautious with promises, you're not going to ever make any promises.
Perfect.
Yeah, that's probably. I mean, that might be the lesson to take from this. Yeah.
Right. I mean, in some ways, right? Like, if you're not sure that you can keep it, then why do it?
But you can never make bold plans then that rely on
you can.
No, you can't.
You just need to not make a bold plan that relies on a guy who nearly died from a coma, from stomach cancer equivalent,
Yeah. But it didn't rely
his contingencies are bad.
It just, he existed, and his non-existence fucks that plan.
Yep. Specifically, and these other two. There's a lot of complicating circumstances.
There's complications.
Yes. Okay, with that, we get into our final chapter of the first half here, The Kingmaker. I figured it made sense to, we got to get through this part before we take a little drinky break, So, time to talk about our boy. I really appreciate how our boy is pretty nervous about this whole open vote and what that even potentially means for the future of the Union. It's like he's actually grown to actually care about the history here in some way via the exposure on the plains and, they're a little bit. And in many ways, this is just a massive moment, a change, a turn in history, as people keep highlighting throughout the section.
Yeah, I think the fact that he's nervous about this without even realizing that he's in the running is pretty telling about who Jezal has become to this point. It'd be pretty easy, I think, for him to be, and I think at the beginning of the first book, he would have been kind of, I don't want to say callous about it, but he would have been uncaring about it.
I think it would have been more laissez-faire.
Yeah.
More obedient, perhaps. More like he didn't care about a choice being made. He maybe wants a choice made for him.
Maybe. Or he would have recognized that no matter the choice, no matter what happened, his position would be identical. He'd be doing exactly the same thing, serving a very similar entity to what he was serving before.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was just making a point with the quote from earlier. Yeah. That was it.
I know.
Yeah. Okay.
Well placed.
But yeah, I agree with you. I would say his affectation, I think, would be more laissez-faire. Again, it would be more, so what?
Yeah.
I appreciate some of the scene dressing that we get over the course of this, including sort of the billowing curtains and a lot of the room description I think is great. But in particular, the way that one of the things that I appreciate the most about Joe, and we almost don't talk about this enough, is he sets scenes through POVs so well. He lingers on none of the detail. You barely know what the Lord's Round looks like. It's it is a room with a table in the center. It is a room. This is a room with a bunch of bleachers that people sit in to vote. This is a room that has some drapes on the side. It's very clear and plain, and you know exactly what you're getting. There's nothing about the masonry or the exquisite stonework unless it requires that sort of level of detail because it's fantastic and beyond your general comprehension of what you think it would look like. Imagine medieval, you get it. He basically just assumes that you understand. Which is why when he draws attention to things, it's so good. Like this, where he points in Jezal's perspective to who else but the first of the Magi, attired once again in his outrageous wizard's mantle, his apprentice skulking at his elbow. Bias grinned as though he was doing nothing more than attending the theater. Their eyes met, and the Magus had the gall to wink.
The gall, Bias. The gall.
The gall.
Yeah, you're right. It is nice to get little flourishes of detail once in a while. I've brought it up before. I'm still curious about the feelings of the costume supplier from the first book. And if he's proud, if he's using it to his advantage, if he's
got to be marketing.
Not noticed at all that the actual first of the Magi is using his costume that was just the costume for the first of the Magi for a play.
Yeah, I think he's had to have noticed. I think someone's got to have told him at this point.
Probably.
The rumor of Bias being in town has circulated, of course.
Right.
Yeah.
But there are some more descriptions of the Lord's Round. It being, I can't remember. I lingered on the word that he used to describe it, of the section that the open council sits on. Not tiered, but
curved bank of benches.
Yep, that's it.
Yeah. And again, I'm not saying that he doesn't describe things. I'm just saying he keeps it simple.
Yeah, for sure.
Which is a talent. Yeah.
But yeah, I actually linger on that curved bank description. I'm like, oh, that's a good way to put that.
It is actually a round, a circle, not necessarily like a square, I don't know, thing. Yeah. So we then transition from Gisele's perspective over to Glokta's as they lock eyes with one another, and Glokta continues to run over the various politics, the leaders that are present, their positions, the fates of various areas as they come to pass. Angland representation being there, Westport being of a completely different skin tone, but there are 12 members represented, and obviously the Dagoskin seats being completely emptied. Before we're treated to a very short history lesson from Hoff.
I just have to say, before getting into the specifics of it, this chapter specifically has such fluid transitions between POVs. Compared to all of the other chapters so far, this one was done so well. As always, it feels very cinematic. But switching between Giselle and Glokta and Pharaoh and back again, beautifully done. Happy with that. I actually really liked Hoff's history lesson. I feel like it could have easily been turned into an example of just a boring lead-in to a vote, and maybe even just a description of like Hoff droned on for a while about this and that, whatever, from either Glokta's or Giselle's point of view. But maybe it's just that I'm invested in the story, and I found it all really interesting. Yeah, I appreciated it.
Yeah, it is. I agree with you on how fluid this is. I think it's excellent. It, again, speaks to Joe's ability as an editor, obviously as a film editor, to like move us and transition us from person to person and seamlessly, as though it's like a glance between characters and then we're flipping perspectives, which is just so cool, I think, too, to have like basically everyone switch because of eye contact one way or another, or some form of contact that makes that switch happen. Hoff's lesson, though, I really appreciated, in kind of the reflection on, the fact that this has never happened, this sort of important business, all of the different things, that it's only ever happened once, since the Civil War long ago against Morlick the Mad, which, of course, there's a madman that was dethroned, and that's what started this great line of kings and everything else. Well done, I think, on the whole. Yeah. So we then move to Pharaoh's perspective, fluidly, as we mentioned, and I love seeing her reaction here specifically. I think that it is so nice to have this juxtaposition of her sort of, her particular breed of how she tears apart people. She says this line, "The room was full of signals," and I think it's a strong one that shows that she knows who is voting for who and clearly indicates the level of attention she's capable of paying beyond the normal range of a union member, person or otherwise, that sort of devil blood in some way, or maybe just her life on the plains having reared its head. And it's so interesting that she so clearly is able to pick apart sort of the petty squabbles of small men.
Yeah, it shows that her perception is not just distance, but detail. Mm-hmm. And I wouldn't have doubted for a second that she'd pick up on all these signals, but it was the right choice to live in Pharaoh for this moment. Mm-hmm. Yeah, felt good
to see all of the small conversations,
kind of have this Overwatch point of view to it all.
Mm-hmm. So they call for the vote, of course, and before the voting can properly commence, Baez interrupts the open council and the potential for Brock to be the first candidate past the post of the three that they are going to vote for. He then states that there may be a royal bastard, and so Baez spins the tale of Carmi Danroth, a favorite of the king who had a baby with her, and she died in childbirth in post of that, and none other than Baez was appointed to be responsible for this child, this son, and of course, this son is none other than Giselle Dan Luthar.
Mm-hmm. Carmi Danroth was mentioned in the past, yeah?
Genuinely, PJ, I don't know.
Give me
a second.
I feel like Baez maybe told the story of her to Giselle on the road.
I think so. Exactly. That sounds... Yeah.
Yeah, you mentioned that Baez was appointed, and I don't know if that was conveyed there. It seemed like Baez took it upon himself to make this contingency.
He claims he was appointed.
Does he?
But,
okay.
Yeah.
Sure. Okay.
I think that's the right reaction.
Yeah.
Yeah.
as we discussed, this isn't quite the unknown lineage that I was anticipating. I genuinely believed there was something devilish going on. But I do feel good for picking up on some of the little hints that were dropped earlier on. So I'm counting it as a half win in my book.
It was Glokta of whom brought up Carmi to Artie at the hanging. Yep.
Okay.
Just looked it up real quick.
Yeah. Good to know.
Talking about bastards specifically, and who could inherit from the king when he dies.
Well,
it's like, there's a rumor. And look, the rumor came true.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now I kind of wish. I don't know. I want to hear Glokta's take on that later on. Like specifically if he has a chance to sort of think about Carmi again, that'd be cool.
Yeah, if he comes back to it in some way. Totally. I mean, and the way that he paints it is, it's more like, the way that he says it in Before They're Hanged is more like people love to like spin the rumor mill and like flirt with these different ideas because they're fun, and a young woman will die from time to time, and that just further spurs the rumors, and so he kind of plays it off as this like thing that is like, it's a mill, there's a little truth to it, but it turns out instead to be entirely true.
According to Baez.
Well, sure. Who are you going to trust? But how great is Pharaoh's reaction when all of this happens, when she just cackles from the top row, just pure unbridled laughter when we switch into her perspective.
Yeah, I am torn on this because the description of her cackling was funny, but it was also sadly telling of how she sees herself. And she describes this like grotesque, ugly thing that she's doing, like hacking and coughing and making noises. But we immediately, like, this is the transition to switch to Jazal's perspective. And he simply sees it as somebody laughing above him. So like he doesn't recognize it, doesn't point it out as like, oh, that's Pharaoh's like fuck ugly laugh that's going on. Like, oh, who the fuck is like coughing in the seats above me? He just hears laughter, but she sees something horrifying the way she describes it to herself.
Yeah, that's interesting. I hadn't considered it to the degree that you are. I had always thought about it. I think more a little bit toned down, just in the way that like she's uncomfortable with her own laughter in a lot of ways because she never really laughed. So she like really doesn't even know the sensation. Yeah. Or like, isn't okay with it necessarily. But I wouldn't dissuade the read because it is also, she's incredibly self-deprecating. So that's definitely worth pondering and considering in the scope of things, because she certainly,
I'm sure
that's of her character.
I'm maybe inflating it a little bit more than how I'm actually reading into it, but hyperbole exists for a reason.
Yeah. Well, and she doesn't like herself. That much we
that's
know.
Pretty clear.
Yeah. In as many words. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, like you mentioned, we switched to Jazal's perspective. All has become plain. Jazal won the contest through Baez's influence. He went on a journey under Baez's influence. He put down a rebellion under interesting circumstances. The kingship clearly runs heavy in his veins. He is meant to lead them in so many different ways, and these are like outward notions that are proclaimed by those around him. When he starts thinking about it a little bit closer, the odd facts begin to bubble to the surface. He doesn't look like his brothers. His father treated him a little bit differently. Baez scared the shit out of his father previously at the contest, turning him white as milk. The king had mistaken him for his old son back in the day, back when that happened, which wasn't a mistake, but a truth that the king must have been aware of. And it is clear that, yes, Jazal is the son of the king, perhaps the king bastard of them all, even.
Yeah, I think there's a couple leaps in logic there. So the last one, the king recognizing or calling Jazal his son, I don't think necessarily says that he knows that Jazal is his son, but maybe just in his in his aged, addled mind, sees a familial face, like recognizes the features and thinks that it's one of his other sons. Doesn't necessarily mean that he knows about Jazal and knows who Jazal is. It's possible. I don't know. But I can see sort of a way that that's not necessarily true. But the thing that I'm curious about most is the source of the fear from Jazal's father towards Baez, and what sort of threats might be involved to elicit that reaction.
We kind of get this answer. We don't get specifically the threats, but he does say that he cleared debts for him and more.
Gotcha. Yep.
As a part of the conversation. I think that happens later post the open council meeting. I don't think it's before. It's around that.
Around I think when he is being fitted for the crown, or after he's been fitted for the crown.
Yes, yeah. So it's just before the closed council meeting.
Yep.
And I think that that's the extent of like what we get for now or what we have for now. But yeah, it's clear that he took care of some debts and like had set high expectations of like what was going to happen. You want to hear a personal theory?
Yeah.
Here. So my personal working theory on that bad boy is that Baez is displeased with how bad of a fencer Jazal is. Even though he's good, he's not as good as he should be, enough to win the contest on his own. And so that's why he influences him to win. And I think that he tells the dad as much, in addition to him being scared shitless because he hasn't seen him in so long.
Gotcha.
But that's my personal working theory on that bad boy of like, he's not as good as he should be.
Yeah. I like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
And like, it's almost like his dad fulfilled all the base minimum needs that Baez asked for and didn't do any more than that. Like Jazal's not a good man, by any stretch at the beginning of this. He's a shithead who's been spoiled to death. And so like he didn't raise him right in the way that like is befitting, someone of potential royalty. Although did his dad know that was who he was raising and what he was raising? I don't know.
Yeah, maybe not.
Yeah. Complicated, to say the least. Read the bit on the king. You're going to love rereading the series. I'm just going to tell you outright. You're going to have so much fun.
I believe it.
Personally, I think you're not that far off, but I do think that there is something in him that knows him to be his son, if that makes sense. Like there's some flash of recognition. It is likely the things that you're citing, but I think that it is also a confluence of other factors like age and timing, and like there's something more than just an awkward coincidence.
Doesn't he? I mean, yeah, I believe that, but doesn't he like explicitly say Reynolds' name? Or does he just imply it?
I think he just calls him son, and then they like freak out. I don't think he calls him Reynolds. So we just wanted to double check. I'm glad that we did. There is definitely, to PJ's point, he does call him Reynolds. There is mixed confusion, though, not only in his face, but on everyone else's, and even from the two princes and otherwise, because the two princes are both present. It's not like they're missing. So he's seeing effectively a third.
I don't know, man. But at the very least, familial recognition is what it seems to be pointing to. If not more.
Yeah. Brothers don't like him. They don't look the same. So we then shift to Glokta, of whom is assembling the puzzle in many ways with us. He gives sort of a similar reflection to some of the things that we just recounted, but in addition, noticing some other similarities within the puzzle and noticing Baez at the center of a lot of them, noticing the patience even with which Baez has enacted this slow plan, slotting it all in right before their eyes to make everyone believe it and to create this believable situation where this, for now, we'll call it a question of a bastard is brought, presented, and crowned, and like how cautiously and carefully he really did that and pulled that off.
Yeah.
Oh, and Salt's okay with it. And he throws all of his votes behind it, which is hilarious.
Yeah, that is.
He's like,
good.
Cool, sounds good.
Yeah. Glokta gets so shit on through all this. He just gets overrun. Like he
especially
gets asked
this week
for his opinion, gets the bare minimum out, has more to say, which would totally help his own case. But Salt goes with it. Like, all right, cool, he's fine. Which becomes a problem later to the point that we made earlier.
Huh.
It is pretty funny to see Salt just like be totally agreeable with something that Baez puts forward.
He's like, sounds good. It's I guess we'll take him, especially after, like he asks Glokta, and he's like, yeah, he's bad. If you would have asked me before, I would have said he's XXXYYY. But and then he's like, sounds good. And it's like, no, you didn't listen to the but. There's an and. There's more.
Right.
Billy Mays here, and there's more.
Always more.
Yeah. Of course, in the moment, all of this enrages Brock as he strongly protests and demands proof be provided. No additional proof is levied as is necessary because everyone begins casting their votes, shouting over him one way or another. He storms out with his followers, and King Jazal is elevated to the throne.
Cheers to our king.
Our king.
Yeah.
Cheers.
Our liege. No
our
longer
liege. Our boy, our liege, our king, our man. What a long way he's come,
Mm-hmm.
What a long way our shithead has made it. PJ just pulled straight out of the Fernet Branca because I think he finished his cocktail. Just so everybody knows it.
Cocktail.
Yeah. All right. Cool. With that, our section ends here with a lot of knives twisted in the backs of plans that had been long gestating since books and books. Lord Brock in particular. I mean, ooh, man. But with that, it's our drink segment. PJ, what did you have before you just finished it?
I made a spin on a Calimocho, which is, I hadn't heard of it before, but we were out to eat at the last night that we were in Alaska, and this was on the menu, and it was really, really interesting. So I wanted to see what I could do with the format a little bit. So the Calimocho in general is equal parts red wine and Coca-Cola with like a splash of lemon. But I wanted to make it a little bit more complicated than that. So
okay,
I went with 2 ounces of Fernet Branca, 1.5 ounces of lemon juice, and 3/4 of an ounce of red wine syrup. And then I added 1/4 ounce of green chartreuse. I think that might have been too much. I think I'd go with like just a bar spoon of it, just a little bit of it.
Okay.
But anyway,
yeah.
I shook that up basically as like a Fernet sour with red wine syrup, and then topped it with, I would have done Coca-Cola if I had any, but I only had only had Dr. Pepper. So I topped it with Dr. Pepper. It worked out really well. Like I said, maybe a little bit less green chartreuse, maybe a little bit more sweetness, so you don't have to add so much Dr. Pepper to like balance it. But overall, pretty happy with it. I am titling it the Kingmaker's Curious Concoction. And I added a little twist of lemon. I genuinely tried to make it look like a little bit of a crown and then forgot that when I took the picture. So it's just a twist of lemon on the rim of the glass. But I meant to line it up.
I mean, it kind of looks like a turned crown in some ways.
Yeah.
Because it's on the side.
Right.
Yeah. It kind of, I mean, I get it.
Mm-hmm.
It's well fashioned though, and the drink looked really pretty in the photos. That's definitely one you should put up on the website.
Yeah,
so
will do.
That one belongs there.
Yeah,
I'd be curious about like yellow chartruise as opposed to green.
Yeah,
in the case of like how delicate you're saying it was.
Just have green.
Yeah,
so.
Yeah, I figured, but I was like, I would be curious. I haven't played around enough with yellow either.
Mm-hmm. But back half beer, I think I'm either gonna quickly shake up another one of these. Nah, probably not. I'm going to open up the bottle of Mango Magnifico that I've still got in the fridge. That is a beer from Founders, I believe, that you and I used to have with our friends pretty regularly. It's this sort of habanero mango ale, and they recently re-released it, and it's not the same it used to be. It's not. It wasn't the nostalgia hit that we were expecting, but I think it'll still be fine.
It had a little bit more of like a strong ale taste,
yeah,
which was interesting.
It's definitely more of like a strong ale or an amber or something, as opposed to like
but it wasn't, because I remember it being closer to an amber, not a strong ale, and it had like some distinct malty notes almost, which was different and weird.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, Anyway, we had it at the bachelor party, last week when we were recording and otherwise. So in person. Fair. Sounds good.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, I'm going to whip up another one of these for my back half because I don't have a back half. So I was going to stop. I went and played around at disc golf. I was going to stop and make a cocktail, I was going to stop and pick up beer, but I forgot my fucking wallet, which is so unlike me to have left the house without searching for 15 minutes, struggling to find it. I had left it on my dresser and just totally spaced and didn't grab it.
You don't have Apple Pay hooked up?
Well, I do, but the place that I was swinging into, Mankind, doesn't take Apple Pay. They don't take any tap to pay. The little payment system that they bought for the new brewery doesn't have tap to pay, which is wild.
That seems pretty uncommon.
PJ, that's why I've had to use our card there so frequently, is because it doesn't take fucking Apple Pay. Yeah. And it didn't take my card for a while either until I got a new one. So then I had to just Venmo you for the amount of money that I was taking out of the card to be clear that it's hey, I'm paying Mankind. This is the amount of money. I'm using our business card because nothing is working for some reason.
Get your shit together, Mankind.
Yeah.
The only reason I know you is because we follow you on Instagram and Crossan likes you.
Yeah.
But get your shit together.
Before I hop into my cocktail, so I think we've told the story. Maybe I haven't. There's a hot sauce company that's out of Spain that my parents met up with when they were. I found out that they follow us on Twitter. They're on the new season of Hot Ones. I know that I just jumped through that story very rapidly, but they don't distribute to the United States. My dad met the guy who's the founder. It's just it's him and his wife are the only ones that produce the hot sauce. They use, as opposed to vinegar, they use kombucha and they ferment everything to generate the base of the hot sauce, which prevents it from tasting like vinegar. And all of them are dynamite. They also don't repeat hot sauces ever. And you cannot get it outside of, and this is a free ad because the guy follows us. My dad talked him into coming on our podcast maybe at some point. I don't know. My dad keeps doing that at different breweries and distilleries and stuff like that. I'm like, that's not what we do. But I keep reminding him. He's like, yeah, but whiskey. And I was like, that's a hot sauce, dude. Anyway, the Ilmig you can get from Heatnist. It's super good. I have it very frequently. It's a very good hot sauce.
Yeah.
It's on the most recent Hot Ones. It's on the hotter side of their sauces. So,
okay.
In the back four. So, super good. Anyway, rant aside, I found he liked the photo that I posted this weekend of me in with all my books that I inherited from my grandpa. I was thinking about doing something for a project, and he liked the photo, and I went, wait a minute. It's this. Oh, fuck, I forgot.
That's really funny.
Anyway, yeah. Go buy the hot sauce. I'll probably put a link in the description.
I'm going to buy the hot sauce maybe during the break.
Perfect. PJ, the cocktail that I'm having tonight is Closed Council Conciliatory Wine is what I'm calling it. So what this is, I wanted to make something that was reminiscent of, we played around with some of the lemonade-y things on the show. And we've done, port lemonade is one of our favorite cocktails. So I was I didn't want to mimic it, but I was I kind of want to shoot for something that I think will taste similar. So what I did, 1.5 ounces of vodka, 2.25 ounces of New World gin. This was a mistake, just in a heavy hand on accident. Let me just clarify that way. It was still very good. It didn't even seem strong. Matter of fact, it was all buried really well beneath everything else that is in this cocktail. But I would tone it back a little bit for other people's sake. 1 ounce of Campari, 1 ounce of lime juice, and 1 ounce of my black tea simple syrup, a splash of pomegranate juice, and a dash of orange bitters on top. Honestly, PJ, I've been saying this a lot lately, I think this is in the top 10 cocktails that I've made on this show. I particularly like Campari. I like those bitter notes. I also like the bitter notes of gin. And so this just works. It's it's a spin on a Negroni in a lot of ways. But because of that lime juice in there, it does kind of almost bring it to a port lemonade place. And that pomegranate really rounds it out well. So, yeah, really like it.
So I'm curious.
I also, real quick, I shook it and I let it dilute in the water for 5 minutes because I didn't have club soda, which I would have probably used to lengthen it instead. I think actually letting it dilute is the better move. Okay. Just a little bit of water in there post shake.
Gotcha.
You could drop some cubes in instead, I guess.
You could tone back the gin, like you were mentioning, but why not just go for more gin and eliminate the vodka? Do you think the vodka tempers it more, or what's your thought there?
This vodka a little bit. it does. So again, this is Momentum, the New World Momentum gin. I really like it. It's really potent in terms of its flavor profile. So I like to mellow it a little bit. I mean, like most martinis, right? Like you don't want, even in a gin martini, you don't just go straight gin. You go a little bit of vodka because you're trying to like lengthen out the flavor.
Gotcha. Okay.
So
cool.
Yeah, it's kind of the same game. I would say you could tone down the vodka if you wanted to like pull out the gin flavor more. For me, and maybe because I overpoured, I really like this the way that it is. If you're trying to appropriate it and put it in the right space, you would tone down the vodka a half ounce and you would tone down the gin 3/4 ounces, I think.
And just go like 1 ounce and 1.5 ounce?
1 to 1.5. Yeah.
Okay.
1 to 1.5, probably 3/4 Campari, 3/4 lime, 3/4 black tea. Simple. I think that would do it.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
That sounds good.
Yeah.
Sounds
Orange bitters were a late addition to the party, and they worked great. They brought out more of the orange notes of the Campari, which I liked. Like I said, no back half beer. So that's it. That's it, baby.
Right. Yeah.
All right. Cool.
Make those edits and see what the next one tastes like.
Yeah.
The back half.
I will adjust accordingly. Oh, I think I'm out of the black tea simple syrup, though. I think that was the end of it. We'll see. I might have more in a bottle, but there's a couple of those I bottled too. Okay, real quick update. I made the cocktail to our specifications outside of the fact that I did not have the black tea simple syrup. I'm going to go ahead and say that is a critical ingredient in this. I made it instead with orgeat, and it was good, but not at all the flavor profile anymore. I did tone it down like exactly the way that we suggested and like railed everything back. I was intrigued by the idea of like trying orgeat in it instead. It is not as good. The other one is definitely the way to go.
Good to know.
So,
all right.
That black tea simple syrup is just simple syrup with 2 bags of English black tea in it. So 8 ounces, so like strong tea. It would be super strong tea, but for simple syrup, it's great.
All right.
Cool. I'm not disappointed. It's still pretty good. It's just not as good as what it was,
Makes sense.
Cool. With that, let's get into the trap. The first trap is the friends we've made along the way.
Always.
Namely, the dire friendship struck with Krummicky Fail. I think it's worth pointing out at this point that he does say that he loves his daughter, Isern, most of all and most dearly of all of his children. It's just a great moment, I think, on the whole.
Yeah.
We learned Isern's name a little bit later, but,
Yeah, that made me smile quite a bit. He's a dick still, for sure. But
yeah.
At least he doesn't actually constantly forget his daughter all the time.
No, right. That's important. Genuinely. I mean, he is definitely still like he is genuinely crazy. He is batshit up the wall. Like, you know how they like often it is a funny bit in media to call hill people like, oh, they're hill people, blah, blah, blah. This is the first time I've seen real crazy hill people. You know what I mean? In any actual form of media.
They lean into it a little bit.
Yeah. It's pretty funny. But Logan gets annoyed with the warrior incredibly easily throughout this whole segment, especially after being presented with the fortress that they were promised. It's composed effectively of what I view as sort of the medieval equivalent of like a chain link fence. And everyone is like, this is it. It's 100 paces across. It's like fucking nothing that they're effectively defending. So again, I said the trap is the friends that we made along the way. And in Krummick's case, it is very literal as they have put themselves in a trap and they don't even know the union isn't going to come.
Yeah.
Like,
hey, it's the perfect place for a last stand as Lafa warns us through the story.
Yeah.
Yeah. That story fucking, oh,
it got me. It got me. Like he
got
tells
me
it.
too.
He's like,
I
yeah, they all died.
Like, oh, just a bunch of heads in a shithole is the end of that story.
He's like, so what am I supposed to take away from that? I don't know. It's like, okay, dude. It's just a reminder of sort of the callousness of the whole thing, but also, yeah, I don't know. I just particularly appreciated it.
Yeah,
it's funny.
It was.
Yeah. Fucking Lafa. And like, you come on, dude. Like, it further extends the fact that Krummick is this ignoramus, that like, He is a hill person.
Yep.
through. And they have different culture, different traditions, different everything. So I appreciate specifically how Crummock degrades Dogman so readily so many times, especially in contrast to Logan. It happens more than once, more than twice, and he's like, why should I follow you? I only listen to him. And then Dogman kind of earns his respect over the course of the chapter and sort of the planning and everything else. And I'm not sure that it's ease so much as it might be that Crummock is just fickle. I'm not 100% sure, what to make of this besotted man of whom oft praises people under the moon. Yeah. I don't know. What do you think?
I think so. I think Crummock is a little bit less chaotic. Like the form of crazy that has gripped Crummock's mind. I don't think it's just randomness and chaos. I think he has some understanding.
There's some central logic to this.
There's some logic to it.
Okay.
And Dogman is just really likable, I think. He's honest, and he's careful, and he's respectful, and I think it's no wonder that people respect him in return.
Yeah. It does make sense that people respect him in turn, in part. But I do understand your sense of logic about him, and I want to say that I agree with that. I would say with sort of a small caveat of sorts, that is, his logic appears to be derived from this sort of, I don't know what else to call it, but like moon madness. Like
there's some whim to it.
He relates. Yeah.
But I think it's mostly like gut instinct, not just
yes. Random. Yes. Gut instinct is a good way to put it. I was calling it like moon madness.
Moon, but I think it's just his initial sort of gut instinct on things.
Right. Unless the gut instinct is actually the moon.
It could be the moon.
How do we know? Yeah. We keep calling him nuts, but like everything in this story has just been so off the wall that like maybe the moon is the god after all.
I mean, there's some understanding to his presentation as a crazy person later on when he confronts, is it Dow? I think Dow
when he kind of like talks down.
He's like, I'm the crazy one. Why are you following me anyway? Like, you think I'm crazy?
Yeah. It is. It is Dow.
There's some theatrics to it. He's playing up, I think, the crazy aspect of his perception. I don't think it's entirely not there.
Yeah, but it feels more like you don't understand my culture or like who I am or what I'm about.
He utilizes that perception to his own advantage.
Yes. Yeah, I like that. I like that take. I think that you're right on that.
Which, as stated before, there's definitely an analogous character in Red Rising that maybe I'm too readily drawing from.
Hang on. Did we talk about this? I don't think we actually talked about the character.
We didn't get into it, but I mentioned that there were comparisons that I was making.
Is it Cavax?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I don't think that I drew that. I think that I thought. I don't know that I said that last week. My brain,
I didn't say it. We never got into the specifics of it.
Yeah, I don't think we did, because I think in my head I had this belief that you were like comparing him, and I won't say completely illogically, even now, still. There's in a mirrored sort of way, he's not that dissimilar from like Apollonius in a way, which is what I thought you were going for, because like he has a cult of personality in some ways, like
I could also,
and we don't need to go further than that necessarily on like
I could also see some obsidian stuff in him too, but
yeah. Oh, truly, I think my first instinct was that you meant Ragnar, but yeah. But I see the other two, I think, more readily than I would see the third, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Cool. All
Sorry
right.
for the light. I mean, not really any spoilers.
None of those are spoilers. They're character names, for the most part. Yeah. On the whole. So I don't know. Those are fine. Yeah. But apologies for the cross references that you may or may not understand. If you don't, you should go read Red Rising. It's inspired by the first law. You'll love it. In part, at the very least. So, We switch back because we do move into Dogman's perspective for a little bit of this, which I appreciate as just sort of a transitional thing that happens as Dogman and Logan have a conversation. I think it's just a good note to like basically say, hey, when we're in one, we're in the other, which is kind of similar to like when Giselle and Glocta and Pharaoh share a space. Like it's interchangeable and we understand those things. Just as a reminder almost in a way to the audience. But we switch back to Logan's perspective and Crummock addressing his daughter Isern. Through addressing his daughter Isern, we hear that he's killed heaps of men, of different people, but that no one has killed as many people as Logan, to which he shrinks largely from the merciless description that he's given here on the whole. He just kind of retreats back into himself. I particularly love this as a juxtaposition with the very beginning of this chapter, which is Logan reflecting on the death of his daughter and wife at the hands of the Shanka. And then this father and daughter are kind of coming to glorify him for things that he probably wouldn't wish his deceased family to know about him, right? Mm-hmm. To like have in their back pockets. He's glorified for something that he sees in direct contrast with the character that he wishes that he could have been for them instead of what he has become. And I just find it a powerful image.
Oh, for sure. And I mean, Logan is obviously deeply uncomfortable in this moment. And I think that discomfort is multifold. One point being what you just mentioned. Another point being just direct confrontation with his myth, his legend, and among people that intimately understand it and experience some of it. And also his fear to begin with of all the people that are around him that might now be reminded of who this person is, what this person has done, and maybe get a spark lit under them to do something about it if they had previously been content with not. So,
and by that, do you mean that like you think that people might go for the Bloody Nine, like that they're going to try?
Not necessarily, but
as a part of this,
just kind of a cascading, like the more dominoes being set up that are apt to fall.
Potential to tumble. Yeah. And I mean, it is one of his children, nonetheless, that brings up like the idea of fighting Logan. And that's when like this whole conversation comes up and he's like, no. Like, you know, I've killed many men, but he is the killer of all killers, beloved by the moon and impossible to kill as a part of that. Besotted fucking moon. do I need I genuinely love Crummock as a character, but every time it's like beloved of the moon in Pacey's voice, I'm just like, ugh, I hate this guy.
Yeah. Fucking
properly
guy
out there. Yeah, he's good though. Anything else in this chapter? I know by comparison, I think I breezed over a lot of this chapter. There's the fortifications. They discuss setting up spikes and traps in various places, of course, to turn this into a proper trap.
Yeah, I think the only thing that I'd like to point out is Logan kind of stepping up as Dogman's number 2. Like, Logan is giving orders, but the orders are reiterating what Dogman has already said.
Fair point. Yeah.
It could potentially make for a little bit of a tricky sort of power dynamic, but I think they're both mature enough and they're both aligned enough that that's not going to happen. I just hope people don't start looking more towards Logan as the de facto leader as opposed to seeing him as an extension of Dogman.
Yeah, right. And it feels like that is the latter is sort of the way that he wants it to be as well. He wants to maintain that because he's not trying to step on any toes. He's like, why won't you listen to him? Okay, fuck you. This is what needs to be done then, which is exactly what he just said. Just do it. And then as such, Dogman does eventually earn the respect. And yeah. Good call. It's a good chapter. I love these North chapters setting up this sort of larger conflict that we're clearly going to be facing down in the near term. In addition to, one other thing that I kind of forgot to mention is sort of the plan itself to swap back and forth that does earn the respect. You know, there's going to be a group out front at first. They'll fight for a number of hours or days or whatever. And then they'll switch positions to allow for them to refortify, shoot some arrows, continue to protect the fortress, quote. and bring out the reserves, basically. And there's sort of this nice strategy dichotomy of moving back and forth between the bases, which, Joe, I know that you love your 4X games. That seems to me like a Hero's Might and Magic or like a Total War move to bring out your one hero. You fight out in the front with all the forces, and you send the other one back to recoup, and then you trade places. It seems like the same shit, my guy.
Could be.
I see you. I see you playing Shogun. Anything else in this chapter?
I don't think so.
It's a good one.
Covers it.
It's a good one. There's shockingly a lot in what is effectively 23 minutes. This is one of the first weeks, too, that I've been fortunate enough to get to listen to all of the chapters as opposed to read them. And generally, I get a couple in each week, and I kind of like pick the ones that I listen to. But this week, I got to listen to them all. And oh, man, so good. Love Stephen Pacey.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think
all right.
On both flights, I read and listened to the entire thing.
You don't have time going to Alaska and back.
Yeah. That felt fair. Good. I feel well versed in this section.
Cool. All right. With that, we'll move on to Horrible Old Men. We open to our king, our boy king, our Jazal Dan Luthar being fitted for a new crown. And it reminds me immediately of the dress scene from Mistborn, albeit with far less meaning. We're not going to, there's nothing to be conflated here one way or another, but more directly speaks to what he needs to represent, at least through Bayaz's eyes. This is all marketing, baby.
Entirely through Bayaz's eyes, as we're coming to see. Like this, Bayaz is such a puppet master.
He is just sitting there like, ooh, we need to give him a thin crown. It looks like he could be worn on the battlefield. No, he's not going to fight on the fucking battlefield. He's not that good at it. You should know this. And then he's
got to look like good.
Yeah. I forget what it, oh God, it's so good. After like running through all of the different specs of what it needs or what it's required, he says, good. And one more thing, put a big ass diamond in it. And I forgot about that, but like Stephen Pacey's delivery through Bayaz, I was just not prepared for him to say big ass. It's like, it was so good. I laughed pretty hard at that one.
It did get me thinking about different versions of the book for different releases, because this is obviously Big Arsed Diamond.
Mm-hmm.
All of the distances are in miles. I don't know if that's the case for the UK releases, if they're in kilometers or if they just uses miles in general. Does England use miles for distances in some situations?
England, I don't know specifically. I think they're all kilometer. I think it is kilometer because Canada and Australia are kilometer. So I assume because they pretty much have taken all their laws and rules from the UK in general as a base. I think that's the case. However, they are also the origination point of the imperial system in a lot of different ways. So I would not be shocked if there are some segments. That said, my experience from listening to a lot of people talk about editing and like editing for different regions, sometimes they switch everything, sometimes they don't. Sometimes there's a lot of localization, sometimes there isn't. A book that I've read that has the most localization in it is Neverwhere by Neil Gaiman. I only read the first 100 pages, I should say. I couldn't get through it. It's one of the few Gaiman books I don't like. And like Trash Can changed out for Bin and stuff like that. But distances are generally one of those things where it's like whatever you put in sticks, because people generally have an understanding of both, whichever way. And so like a character's perspective, or it's what you've chosen for it to be.
Gotcha.
Generally.
That makes sense.
Yeah. I also, fun fact, I have both an American and a UK version of these books, so I could check, but I think it's miles. I'd be pretty confident to say.
Cool.
Yeah. English, an American, US version, and then a UK, but they're both in English. Neither one's in German or Italian or Spanish, which is the language that I speak of the three of those comparatively, or can read. Yeah.
Crosland's mumbling again.
Stop me. It's two of these cocktails. It's doing it. Okay. So what did you think of Jazal's ask inside of this moment to speak to his father? We talked a little bit about this earlier and sort of kind of some of my thoughts about it, but I'm curious as to sort of both your read on Baez's reaction and also like Gisele's need for a parent.
Yeah, I mean, on the part of Giselle, like, it makes sense. It makes total sense. I'd want to too.
Mm-hmm.
I do not like the dismissiveness of Baez in this display. It's not even harsh. It's just dismissive.
Mm.
Like, no, yeah, that life's over.
Yeah.
Fuck you. No.
Well, and he's so inconclusive about it all that he even is like, is my name Giselle? He's like, yes, your name is Giselle. But I don't think that answers the question that he asked to some degree, which is like, did you give me my name? I think is like the subtle question that he asks there. He's like, well, of course it's your name.
Huh.
Yeah.
Does he shed the Dan Luthar?
That is a great question, PJ, that I think has not fully been answered, but I think the answer is no. I think it's still a nobility. Like, I don't think that there's another step of class necessarily.
I mean, his last name.
Oh, you mean, is he no longer Luthar? What is the family's actual last name? Hang on.
Do they? I don't know if they have one.
I think they say Guslav's a couple of times. No, they don't. Yeah, his August Majesty King Guslav V, which he's just Giselle the First, I guess, is the name that he's given. So one could argue he's devoid of his last name now. Ladislaw is not given a last name, and Reynold is not either. So I think it's conceivable to say.
Does Therese
that he
have a last name?
Yeah, Orso.
Okay.
Because of Grand Duke Orso of Talons. Wait, maybe? Fuck. Wait a minute. Hang on. Does Orso have a first name? I'm pretty sure Orso has a first name. It's not going to come up until way later, so I can't speak to it specifically, but I'm pretty sure he has a first name. He pretty much just goes by Orso. Fucking hell, man. I'm pretty sure he's got a first name. Anyway.
In the grand scheme of things, this isn't that important. We don't have to.
I know, but it's an interesting question to pose, nonetheless. Like the idea of like what does the next level of citizenship mean? And I think to the point of even most of the kings that we know, right? Like King Casimir, Herod the Great. I mean, all of these different kings that have been brought up. King Arnold. You know, they're known just by their name, more or less. So, you know. Guslav V implies 4 other Guslavs, though, and I don't know that I like that. I don't know. It's a lot of Guslavs.
It's a lot of Guslavs.
Like, were they all Guslavs in a row?
How many generations has this been? That Baez is.
Great question. Yeah. To be fair, I do kind of later in our notes, but not that much later, I do pose the question of like, how long do you think that this has been going on? It seems as though like if we think about sort of the engine of society in a lot of ways, as we see the closed council, it seems like things have been slowed down pretty dramatically given sort of the facets that, you know, in some ways Baez has helped co-engineer. I mean, what do you think of the union on the whole, given sort of the shift in perspective that we get this week? That is a question right now.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, I wasn't expecting an immediate question about sort of the state of the world as it is, but
of the union.
It does feel stagnant. And it's hard to not draw comparisons to Mistborn, and I'm trying my best not to do that. I don't think it's an intentionally stifled state, but it does feel very stagnant, I guess. Is that a sufficient enough answer?
I think it is for now. I mean, for all intents and off the cuff. It's a curiosity, though, that I think we'll continue to explore and uncover as we continue through this series. Yeah, like we do know that like the university was beginning to, back in the first book when we were introduced to the university, they were beginning to fiddle around with like gunpowder and things like that. It's interesting to think about like, will that make it to the surface? Could that change everything?
And we know it exists in other civilizations.
Yeah.
In a more used way.
Wait, what other civilization.
Isn't there gunpowder use by the Gurkish?
No, they're using oil on the balls.
I thought
stone balls.
I thought we mentioned gunpowder use.
I don't think
black powder use.
I don't,
because I thought we directly compared it to how Glokta was saying, like positing how it could be militarized.
Well, that's because he's in the university talking.
No, I know. And then later on at the Gurkish invasion of Dagaska.
Hang on. Okay. Glokta watched as one of the barrels soared, searing bright against the black heavens. The path of it, a fizzing line burned into his eye. It seemed to hang over the city for an age, as high as almost the citadel itself, then tumbled, crackling from the sky like a meteor. A trail of orange fire blazing behind it fell to the earth in the midst of the lower city. Liquid flames shot upwards, spurted outwards, pounced hungrily upon the tiny silhouettes of the slum huts. A few moments later, the thunderclap of the detonation reached Glokta at his window and made him wince. Explosive powder. Who could have supposed, when I saw it fizzing on the bench of the Adeptus Chemical, that it make such an awesome weapon? Good work, PJ. This assumes that it is the same type of powder, but one assumes that it is, given the description. Yeah,
weaponized in the same way.
Yeah,
it might not
weaponized
be
in a similar way,
alchemically, but
nonetheless, it also, in a way in which this series occasionally mirrors the real world, it does also mirror sort of the origin of powder, given sort of the cultural representation of the Gurkish and sort of like the Turkish and the East in general. That's a large blanket that I'm kind of outcropping there, but I think that it gives proper credit where credit is due in some regard as well.
Makes sense.
Who's to say that, the Union didn't steal it and didn't invented it at all? So, cool. So, on the debts, specifically, we were talking a little bit earlier about the father, of course. On the debts that Bias says he still owes but should not pay, I particularly appreciate the illustrative speech on power that he has beforehand. And this is not to the debts of Jazal's father, rather, but of the debts that Jazal owes to those of whom helped elect him, namely Ishur and sort of two other folks that were promised seats on the closed council. Bias says, upon achieving power, one should immediately distance oneself from all allies. They will feel they own your victory, and no rewards will ever satisfy them. You should elevate your enemies instead. They will gush over small tokens, knowing they do not deserve them.
I like that he also takes it one step further when Jazal kind of takes the logical sort of path from that statement, saying like, oh, so we should do something about Brock. And he's like, no, like that Brock went a little bit too far. He's a little bit too much of an enemy right now. Maybe
too far gone. Good thought, my boy, but too far. Yeah. Maybe not that one. He's a little wonky. We probably shouldn't trust him. Yeah, no, it's a good note. And coming to the actual meeting with the closed council, we truly see all of the horrible old men in their own rights, truly for the first time seriously up close, especially as a group. The actions in this room, Jazal comes to realize, are the things that realistically he is no more than a pawn for, and this drives him to drink, and then he gets mad. When they finally arrive on the topic of who should replace Burr, and despite the two teams pulling for those two disparate generals of Croyne Polder, Jazal declares that it should be West, as he seeks a rock to cling to amidst all of this chaos. When the room begins to retort back at him, he chucks his empty goblet at the head of basically the secretary, and I think they all get the message.
Yeah, I hope that declaration sticks. I think it has to, right?
Yeah.
Presumably.
I think it's pretty clear that it's like, this is the way that it is, and they kind of all agree and then leave.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's accidentally probably the only way that army actually sticks together through this, which is really ironic and great.
The power of friendship, as it were.
Assuming there's a chance that they survive by the time word gets to them, which is a big if. But this is a story
possible
with more books after this, so I assume so. But
I mean, there's a lot of rest of the world, as Glokta points out later, when he's like, I could escape the Thund, I could go do this, I could go do that.
That's a good point. And you know what? People die.
Power to him.
It's fine. Yeah, throwing that goblet at that fucking guy's head. So good.
It was good.
It's a good way to
Deserved.
ring in your
Earned.
lordship. It's a good way to ring in your reign.
With a clang on a dude's skull as he bleeds all over the floor.
Make the guy bleed. Oh, so good.
It is, in some ways, and I mean, the comparison is logical. There's no other part of me that would ever compare Giselle to Joffrey. But in this singular moment, this is a Joffrey-like act and behavior. I mean, in some ways.
Yeah.
It's out of rage as opposed to spite and anger, but it's...
I mean, this is more frustration than anything.
Right. Yeah.
Still...
More akin to something West would do.
Still makes me wonder... God, I'm... Anytime Baez is in the proximity, I'm going to question the intensity of people's emotions. Always. And whether or not they're genuine.
Fair enough. Yeah.
So we'll see.
I mean, particularly, obviously we skipped to the highlights here, but I do want to mention starting the conversation with taxes. I find just so funny. You can't help but laugh at how simple they think the other people would be and how complicated it is to potentially explain to Giselle, albeit there's obviously a reason, like we said, that this society is stuck, and it's because the only thing that works is the thing in front of them, and the bureaucracy prevents them from doing anything different.
Yeah.
In addition to all of the other things.
It's by design.
Yeah.
Entirely. It's not an underestimation of anybody. It is an intentional complication built into the taxation system in order to make it, quote unquote, impossible
built into the whole system.
Any other system.
I'm not even saying the taxation system. I'm just saying the whole system.
Well,
right?
The whole system.
It's beyond the taxation. Just.
I agree, but pointing to the taxation is the apt one right now.
Yeah.
But yes, absolutely.
They're all dumb as rocks.
They built a labyrinth of laws on purpose to keep them at the center of it.
Yeah. After they all flee the room, we then move to a quieter conversation with Baez, saying that he likes how he handled himself, meaning Giselle, in some ways. He believes it could be useful to the new king, and Giselle continues to rage until he realizes whose he's raging at and the danger therein, as he has watched this man blow people apart with the mere instinct of his thoughts.
Yeah. Be careful with that temper, Giselle. There is always going to be an old fat man with a temper that can outshadow you.
An old fat man indeed. All right. There is a wonderful long quote in here that I just have to read first before we try to talk about the rest of it, and we can kind of try to interrogate it a little bit, but I really appreciate it. As it comes from a place in which Giselle kind of sulks and says that he doesn't think that he deserves the throne or his place in this system in general. He doesn't feel like he's earned anything, etc. So Baez says, "No man can ever deserve the throne. That is why you must strive to be worthy of it now, every day, just as your great predecessors did. Casimir, Arnold, Harold himself. Always right? Scarcely. But I have the benefit of long experience and am here to guide you as best as I can. You have made a fine start along a difficult road, and you should be proud, as am I. Chief among them, your wedding." I skipped a sentence there, but chief among the next tasks that he needs to complete are his wedding. So, yeah. They begin to broach the very difficult conversation of who he should marry. Although, is it? Because he almost immediately is like, oh, this sort of temptation of princesses abounds. And Giselle is at the same time swimming in his feelings for Artie, as he recommends that instead she be a mistress while he marries someone of whom should be representative of a queen in actuality, potentially brokering a peace between nations or agreements or otherwise, like Princess Therese, the daughter of Duke Orso of Talons that we've seen before that we don't like.
So
that he has forgotten entirely somehow.
Yeah, Artie is floated out there as an option of a mistress, and ain't no fucking way Artie settles for that.
Ain't no
fucking way. And I don't think Giselle would ever believe that he could, but again, we're in Baez's presence, so I can't necessarily trust his emotions right now.
And he's drunk off his ass.
That's true too. Yeah. He definitely pretty easily slipped back into the
Playboy.
Not even playboy, but just like the attraction to power and attraction to conventional beauty. It's not even attraction to conventional beauty necessarily, but attraction to being perceived as having a beautiful thing at his side. I think, is more where that comes from.
Yeah. Not the desire of the thing that he wanted. And given he is still haunted in some ways by the experience that he had when he returned home. You know, he does remember the creaking. He remembers sort of the aggressiveness of it all and like not agreeing with that holistically and not feeling great about it. At the same time, he does, you know, kind of retreat into security of who he was before once again.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Tough time for our boy, the king.
Tough time to be the king.
Yeah. Anything else in this chapter you want to bring up?
I didn't realize how many kings Baez had strings on. Like, we knew for sure, I think it was, and I think he
Herod's
was
the most obvious, it seems.
Yeah. But to have been also so intimately connected to Casimir and Arnold.
Mm-hmm.
Did he just not like Guslav's name? So all 5 Guslavs are out. They're Baez-less. Is that what it is?
Great question. Unclear.
Mm-hmm.
Unclear. That said, let us move into our final chapter of the week here, Prepared for the Worst. There's a classic, as we move into Glokta's perspective, a classic, why do I do this? From Glokta suggesting, or maybe even asking himself, why he stays around to answer questions, trapped even though he could easily and readily escape, but admitting to himself, I think, in this moment that it is by his own choice in many regards as to why he chooses to stay, because the mystery, in some way to him, is intoxicating of what could be.
Yeah, there's that. There's something to be said about him genuinely enjoying what he does to a certain degree.
Yeah.
There's also the fact that he'd have a pretty hard time navigating the world and avoiding the Inquisition if he were to run with his crippled leg and all of his deformities. He's noticeable, not very mobile. The only thing he's got going for him is wealthy. He's got the means of fleeing. He doesn't necessarily have the means of staying fleed.
Fair point. Of staying fleed. That's good. Yeah. He's the means of escape, but not necessarily the vehicle to get there. The wheels, as it were.
Yeah.
He is a no wheels McGee, isn't he?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Describe him.
Yeah. Dumb joke. Anyway, I do particularly appreciate the way that this chapter kind of opens in post, and we begin to see like him kind of counting the gems and kind of playing around with them in some way. The door, of course, has a knock on it, and he spills them onto the ground. He like kind of crawls all over the ground saying, no, wait, just give me a second, as he collects them and hides them again. But at the same time, he's like, are they coming to get me because they finally found out about all these lies that have been spreading forever? I don't know.
Mm-hmm. That was a stressful bit of reading. First time through, like, oh fuck, oh no, are they going to break the door down?
Yeah, and for what reason? Salt is just there on the other side of the door, wanting to talk to one of his 2 lead inquisitors, superiors, as it were. And his whole conversation with Glokta is just so good. I particularly, on my lunch break today, of which when I was finishing up notes for this, I was listening to this chapter in particular, and I was playing a game of Hearthstone Battlegrounds at the same time, and playing or whatever, and I hit the line where Glokta is like, yes, they ran away with all of these things, and Glokta just quietly, and Stephen Pacey does such a good job with this just goes, "Stop, thief," as though like you could stop someone running away with an election, as though it's like they stole it from us in that way. And I rewound it 3 or 4 fucking times to re-listen to him say that because I was laughing so hard in the moment. Mm-hmm. It's so good to me. I don't know what it is. I'm giving it to this at this moment, but it is one of my favorite jokes in the whole trilogy for sure.
Yeah, I think
it's so small and subtle,
and it is entirely to do with Stephen Pacey's delivery of it.
Yeah, stop, thief. It's got that like break in it. Yep. It's so good. But
I love obviously there's internal monologue. It's always so good.
Yeah. Oh, it's killer, and it punctuates all the jokes. It's one of the reasons that I think that, like we talked about in the wrap-up, it would be tough, of course, to adapt the series. But if you turned Glokta into a fourth wall-breaking character, it could work. And I liked that idea. He just turns to the camera, his teeth adjust, and he speaks normally. And that could be crazy fun.
It could be.
Yeah. As Henry Cavill shrinks in and out of Glokta or something. I don't know.
Whoever.
Not Henry Cavill. Probably not Henry Cavill, but
somebody
has to do it.
I'll do it.
PJ as Glokta. Salt, though, showing up is really mad about Glokta's fixation on myths as he continues to espouse all these different things. And he's like, whatever, shut up. And says that really what he's here beyond sort of the rage of the election and everything else not being able to control him is that we need to investigate Baez further because they clearly need something on this man because it is likely that they're going to have to remove the new king as a result of a number of actions and their belief that he can't be whipped like they thought he was going to be able to be.
Salt is somebody I never want knocking on my door.
Fair.
Ever. Especially if he's my boss. I imagine him as... I don't know. I imagine him taller than me. I don't know. I imagine myself as a child looking up at him. Fuck. This is the point that I was mentioning earlier about Glokta always getting the shit end of the stick. Like, he tried to warn him, tried to be thorough in his explanation of who he understood Jazal to be, and got the first part out. That's what he took. And consult.
Fucking salt, my dude. Yeah. So, from our scary man of whom we don't want at our door and definitely not by our bedside, we move to Severard and Frost, of whom are dealing with something they've determined to be treason before being set upon their own path to find information on Carmi Dan Roth. I really appreciate this idea that like Brock's people are going and rioting in the streets, and of course the Inquisition is shutting them down. They don't even really need a reason. They're kind of Judge Dredd-like, where it's like, nope, you're just getting arrested. Like that's just the way that it is.
Yeah, what's a little bit of treason between friends?
I don't think Brock is a friend with Jazal. I don't know if that's friendship.
I meant between Glokta and Severard and Frost.
Oh, Frost? Sure. Yeah, I mean, a little treason between friends sounds like a volleyball match with somebody's head between the three of them as they point and accuse treason. Speaking of pointing and accusing treason, I really appreciate the quote. It's tiny. Treason, eh? The definition is notoriously flexible. And oh boy, Joe. I mean, hoof.
Pretty true.
Very true.
Given how they've thrown the term treason out pretty regularly throughout the story.
Yeah. I mean, they do often throw out the term treason, and that's something that the Inquisition kind of levies whenever they need to utilize it. But at the same time, there's like genuine treason, and then there's like implied treason,
yeah,
or just treason to treason's end. You know,
mm-hmm. Like Morovia talking about a dream of democracy, and Glokta offhandedly in his mind saying like that sounds like some people might like that to treason. Like there's nothing treasonous about that statement in and of itself, you know? Mm-hmm. But it does get thrown around often. I guess I don't fully understand the definition.
Well,
Or,
I mean,
no,
yeah,
like
it's
their legal definition of treason. Like, I
yes,
understand
yeah, no,
ours, but I don't know if theirs is any different.
I don't know if I understand our definition of treason anymore. For the record, let's be
also
clear.
True.
There's a lot.
Good point.
Anyway. But I think to some degree that is kind of the idea, is like it's notoriously flexible. It's used whichever way they need to. And at this point, this is open treason, I think, is the difference between, secret treason or maybe treason to whatever end they need you to commit treason or to call it treason.
Right.
Yeah. So on their quest, they're sent to go find Carmidan Roth and more information therein. But Glokta from there heads to a tavern to meet none other than Nikomo Casca, our favorite Styrian who survived the rush in Dagaska. I love that Casca is clearly drunk here and just brings up random things like how he used to be dazzling with a throwing knife of all details in the middle of their conversation. He's so drunk that he's like, yeah, I used to be really good at throwing knives.
When was he ever not drunk, though? Like,
I know, but like he's so drunk.
Pretty intensely, pretty acutely drunk here.
Yeah, he calls him like pallid beyond like whatever. He's like the drunkest he's ever seen him. He looks at like he's in bad health. Like there's a lot that's not going well with Casca. Yeah. There's a quote here that I, again, particularly appreciate. They say, luck is a woman drawn to those who least deserve her. And that is just pitch perfect Casca.
Yeah, it's pretty great.
Yeah.
It seems like her sister might be named Leadership.
Ah.
Aha.
In this universe, yes. Yeah.
In most universes.
Or the responsibility of leadership. Yeah. Woof. Or power, maybe, perhaps.
Yeah, power is probably the better way to put that.
Yeah, luck and power. We end our week, though, after meeting our favorite Syrian in the tavern, with Glokta putting the man on an effective retainer for his services should Glokta need them, as another bottle arrives at the table, and our favorite Styrian says, lost causes. My favorite.
Hell yeah.
Hell yeah.
This is a good end to this section. This felt like the end of a TV episode or something. Like this, yeah. Good job. Well done, Crossland.
This is a TV episode, I think, in a like arc. This is a very well constructed, I think. If I were to edit down and cut out this book into little episodes, I think this is a really good one.
Yeah.
Yeah. With a conclusive end. Yep. Okay, so there are some drinks or bets to pay off. However, I'm going to hold them for the beginning of next episode. In particular, I think that there are a couple that you made in relation to that I don't have immediately on this page that were from the last episode that you made a bet on Giselle. We'll pay it off at the beginning of next episode. I think I take the drink for it in the terms, or maybe it's a push. It's between the two. I can't remember. I don't think you fully drink, but I think it was specific enough that maybe it's a question. Anyway, we will get into that next time in particular.
What else will we get into next time in particular, Crossland?
PJ, next week in particular, we are going to be reading the chapters, The Habit of Command through the Fourth Day. So, The Habit of Command through the Fourth Day.
All right. Sounds good to me.
In
the meantime, while I read that, you could read all of our social media posts by following us on social media at Words Whiskey Pod. Pretty much everything, or if you've already read all of them, you could send us an email at wordsandwhiskeyshow@gmail.com or leave us a voicemail at 910-408-2534. Please do. And I don't think we mentioned it over the course of this whole episode, but you can join us and support us at patreon.com/wordsandwhiskey. It's a really big deal. It supports not only us, but other shows that we continue to host and provide for as a part of the umbrella. So please do. I mean, we would really appreciate having you joining the conversation, and you can also appreciate some of our Devil's Cuts. I mean, we have over 100 some odd episodes of bonus content tucked into the wall now, which is crazy to think about. We have 200 and I think this is 15 or 14 public episodes. And then we have like 107 bonus episodes. Jesus. There's so much more. A lot of us talking.
Yeah, hope you enjoy that. That's literally what we have to offer. Beyond that, make sure that you leave us a review. If you don't leave us a 5-star review, I mean, we're going to throw an empty goblet at your head.
I'm a
cool.
good shot.
With that, I'll see you
I'm
next
a good
week.
Aim with goblets.
Yeah, good. I've got a lot of goblets, so I don't even need good aim. I just have got a lot of goblets.
He sharpens them too.
I sharpen those bottoms. I'm ready. All right. See you next week, folks.
See you then. Bye.